But even if we did and have a state income tax here, we're still going to have some kind of sales tax, because even at local levels, they'll vote in initiatives or whatever that don't have sunset clauses, and so you're still going to have, you'll still have a sales tax. It's not like it's going to go away.
Yeah, the best state tax systems are taxed almost everything. Almost everything's taxed a little bit. That's the best system, where you tax everything, but not at a very high level. Oregon's system, which is based almost entirely on an income tax, has no sales tax. I mean, they've had even more problems than we have had.
Well, California just increased their sales tax by 1%, and they have like 6.2% income tax there, and then they have I forget what their sales tax went up, but it was a whole percent in the beginning of April, and so now there's still communities that pay 9 and 10% sales tax on top of their incredibly high income tax. So it's like a freight train that's completely out of control.
Because Jarvis cut back on their property tax. It's a three-legged stool.
Yeah, so I mean...
So the quick question that I had was, of the states that do have sales tax, do all of them have income tax? Of the states that have income tax, do all of them, or the majority of them, have also sales tax? Yes.
Yes. Oregon and I think Alaska are the only two states that don't have sales tax, but of course Alaska has all of that.
So those people who say, well, I'll do a sales tax, I'll do an income state tax, but I don't want a sales tax, that's really unrealistic.
I would say that that's not a good system. That would be an equally unbalanced system. We need a balanced system in this state. We don't need, putting all of our eggs in one basket is not good. The economy is going to have its ups and downs. You're not going to have any system that doesn't have increases and decreases in revenue as the economy goes up and down. But what you do want is you want a kind of a tax structure that's going to grow naturally with the economy. You want to tax the parts of the economy that are growing, as well as the parts of the economy that are shrinking. And we have a tax structure that was pretty good for the economy of the 1930s. But the parts that have been growing and becoming increasingly important, we tax either not at all or relatively lightly. And so that's kind of the crux of our problem. Other states which have broader-based systems, they're having problems too. Every state in this country has been having a big problem this year. But you get, the broader based your tax system is, the more chances you have to have something going up when everything else is going down. And the structural problem we have, the fact that our base is shrinking, have something that's taxing the part of the economy that's growing, it's going to allow us to keep pace better with the growth in the economy and the growing demands for new kinds of state investments that we just didn't have in the earlier period. So what I have here is a particular proposal, not to completely transform our tax system into the ideal system. In politics, there's a saying, the perfect is the enemy of the good. We could, in fact, go out there and advocate for total tax restructuring, create a really good system, which is something that, if you go back and look at the Gates Commission report in 2002, they advocated a complete overhaul, starting basically from scratch in some ways of our tax system. And that might be ideally what we would do, but pragmatically, it's not likely that we're going to get there anytime soon. So if there's something that we could actually, that is within our grasp, that's going to make a big difference and start us going in the right direction, and at least give us the revenues, the new revenues, to make at least the educational investments that we really need to make in order to start to move that graph I showed you at the beginning, where we're going down, 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 start moving that at least back up towards the center again, and start making some of these investments in the new definition of basic that we just adopted. So I would argue that our goals really need to be to make our kids and our state more competitive, to raise at least $2 billion per biennium for new education investments, and not just in K-12, but in the whole range of education. And that the means for doing that needs to be expanding the tax base to a growing area of the economy in a way that makes the tax system fairer. So, here's what I call called the fair share tax proposal. There are different ways one can do this, but this particular fair share tax proposal would add a new tax on incomes over $200,000. So couples whose incomes were less than $200,000 or individuals at less than $100,000 wouldn't pay any of this new tax. You would reduce a portion of the state property tax and the B&O tax, particularly for small businesses. And this would result in raising $2 billion of net new revenue that would be dedicated to education. Because in our current political climate, doing new taxes that aren't dedicated is something that the voters aren't.
How do you make that happen? How do you make this spend on education
Well, there are ways to do that.
well, it doesn't
I
seem
mean,
like
money
we've been
is
able to make our
fundamental,
legislative people fully fund basic education for 30-some years, so what makes us think that they're going to do this to fully fund it now? I mean,
Well, you can
the
certainly-
faith in very low.
That's true. There's a lot of, and so I think you need to set up some real accountability. This would have to
I think that has to be
So let me go through, and then I see hands popping up everywhere. So I know you're eager to get into it. Let me just go through the rest here, and then we can talk about it, because we're about at 3:30. We have to end at 3:45. Is that?
Yes, we're at that.
Okay. If you want to get back on schedule. So like I said, exempting the first $200,000, base it on the federal income tax form, so you don't have to do the little forms. So if you do 3%, starting at that 200,000 level, 5% on incomes over 500,000, this is all, incremental, marginal. And then 7% over $1 million. This is still well within the range of most state income taxes. This puts us completely, actually low rates, particularly for, most people over 200,000 in virtually every state are paying at the highest level, and 7% is well within the norm for states income taxes at the highest levels. So that together raises about $3.4 billion biennium. If you offset that by reducing the state part of the property tax by about a quarter, by 1/4, and increasing the business and occupation tax credit for small businesses to a level that would exempt basically a business that does about $1 million in business a year, you lose another half a billion dollars. So you've got anyway, you can see the math there. So you just gain your $2 billion a year. The result would be that only about 4% of Washington households would end up paying the new tax at that level. All households would pay less in property tax, including renters, because a part of property taxes get calculated into rents. So, ultimately, even renters would see some benefit from this. And 88% of businesses at that level would be exempt from paying the business and occupation tax. Right now, about 48% of businesses are exempt under the existing small business credit that we have. And of course, all of us would benefit from better schools. The context that we have for doing something like this is we have a pretty tax-averse governor and legislature, as we've seen in the last few weeks. We're still in a severe recession. In 1933, the state Supreme Court, the Washington State Supreme Court, ruled that the graduated income tax that was passed by the voters in 1932 was unconstitutional. And that ruling still stands. There are many constitutional scholars who believe that if that were challenged today by some mechanism, like something like this, that the court would very likely reverse that ruling and allow the income tax to stand. And I can go into the details of that if you like. And then, of course, we have Initiative 960 that passed in 2007 that requires that any kind of tax increase be passed by a supermajority in the legislature or be referred to voters for voting. So basically, any kind of tax increase in the current system has to be approved by the voters. The legislature can't do it on their own.
What is a supermajority?
2/3.